All right, everybody, welcome back into the High School Huddle, Section 5 podcast, bringing you everything you need to know about sports in the Rochester area. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on rochesterfirst.com. I'm AJ Feldman. He's always, as of course, Carl Jones. We got some March Madness to talk about. Always exciting this time of year for basketball, and we got Far West Regionals coming up. We've had quite a great run, and it's just only going to get better from here, huh, Carl?
Oh, yeah. It was some electric games over the past week or so. And, the teams that we thought were going to be dominant did their thing. And there was also some surprises that snuck in there as well. So got a little best of both worlds over the past week or so. And can't wait to see how far these teams can go.
Yeah, we have a very special episode for you today. We're bringing back our high school expert, our high school guru from Buffalo, Mary Margaret Johnson, our sister station on WIVB. We always love bringing on here, providing some great insight about the games we got this weekend. We got a really great slate of games. All right, and before we get to that interview, we're going to talk a little bit about the stuff that we saw this last week in Section 5. We had a great championship season, a lot of bricks being raised, a lot of highlights catching around the area. We got some hockey, we got some basketball, we got some cheerleading. We had a couple of runner-up finishes there, so shout out to the ladies there. But first, Carl, kind of the thing that really stood out to you the most here in Section 5 championship weekend, maybe not the thing you expected the most, but, just a big statement that you thought was made in this last week of play here.
For me, it was the two big dogs in AA and Class A. BK doing their thing in the championship game against Fairport, which was a great game, by the way. It was a back-and-forth game throughout the entire way. And then in the fourth quarter, BK did what they did best. They turned up the heat on the defensive end of the floor. Anaya Rowe and Kaya Good did their thing, and Fairport really didn't have an answer down the stretch. So that was my first time seeing them all year. You guys have told me that they're an electric and fun team to watch, and they lived up to the hype in that game. And also, I know Mendon is great, and everyone kind of expected them to win the sectional title yet again, but it was in the way that they did it that really sold me, and that the fact that this team can go as far as any other team in the state, regardless of classification. They were up 8. Against Schrader in the sectional title game, and then they came out sparking in the third quarter, hitting the three ball. Lily Kennedy, Anaya Coleman, Kate Hennessy. I mean, they were electric from behind the line, and I just knew from that point forward. I'm like, if you had any questions about Mendon, about their style of play, how far they can go, they answered every single one of them. So those two teams for sure made some statement wins that I was very impressed with.
Yeah, on my side of it, I'm going to stay in the same school actually with Pittsford Mendon, the boys team. We've obviously been talking about them all season long. They were my favorite. I planted my flag in them. They did me right. That East Mendon game. We circled it potentially on our calendar. We got to see it, and just seeing Jackson Green and Damani Barley go head to head. That was just a premier matchups that I got to see. We're shooting the game through our lens. I'm watching. With my one eye, I'm watching. The ball, filming the highlights. The left eye, I'm like seeing what's going on that side, because they were locking up each other all game long. And I think that was just really the difference, that both players were kind of able to neutralize each other to an extent, but just Mendon had more horses to get it done. Watching Mendon pick apart that East pressure zone that they kind of run, it's a 1-2-2, a 2-3-3-2. They have different variations of it, but they were just able to anticipate where the defender was going to be. Like, they got into a corner, a double team came to them, and East was trying to cut off that wing pass. They kind of fake it there and then hit it to that elbow. They were just manipulating that zone to perfection. They went on a big run at the end of the third quarter. I believe it was 11-0 that they went on that run, which kind of sealed the game. Might have been 12-0 run, but watching Jackson Green, Caleb Lewis was providing most of the offense in that the sectional championship game against Schrader. They had a big run. It was a 13-0 run. He had 11 of those points in that run, and then he was doing a lot of the stuff in that East game. So we talk a lot about Jackson Green for good measure, but Caleb Lewis, another junior, they're very good this year. They're both coming back next year. They're going to be a headache for teams in Section 5 and across the state. The rest of this year and next year as well.
No, that team, they're tough for sure, and especially, and it's bigger than just those two as well. I mean, obviously they got a bunch of horses on that team who can step up and pitch in double digits regardless of the night. So I'm not surprised that they took care of business against East, and a star-studded matchup like we alluded to.
Yeah, and then Carl, maybe a thing that surprised you the most from the sectional championship week, something that maybe caught you a little bit off guard that raise your eyes a little bit.
For me, it was a game that we had talked about. Maybe it was going to be the game of the night for round ball. It was going to be an electric game. Rack's going up against Avon, and then I get there and Avon's up 20. And I talked to everyone on the sideline, Paul Gotham from Pink and Splinters, and he was like, this isn't like a fluke. Like, they're just picking them apart and they're just doing their thing. Because earlier in the year, Rax had beat them in, I believe, overtime. And Avon took it to heart and came back and was scorching from behind the arc. It was kind of funny because after the game, I interviewed their senior star, Zach Colvin. And, you know, he had an electric game. He was named MVP of the of Section C, Class C. And he goes, I want York. And I'm like, usually you don't hear like proclamations from that on any level. Like usually you try to like keep it in-house. But I love the you know, the confidence, the bravado, all that, because they took it right to York the next game in the crossover game. And then to go to the state tournament, they took down Oakfield. So it's just like, clearly this Avon team is clicking at the right time. They got a little swagger to them, obviously. I'm sure it's bigger than Zach Colvin. Michael Rowland as well, when I was there against Rax, was lighting up from behind the arc. I think he had 20 plus. So clearly this Avon team is clicking on all cylinders right now. Got a nice mixture of, you know, the skill, you know, the off the court swagger. So we'll see how that translates to the section 6 opponent.
You know, in that Class C, you know, here in Section 5, you have the 3 different classes: the C1, the C2, the C3. It kind of stinks for them. They've got to win an extra game, at least some of them. If you play in that first crossover game, kind of stinks you have to play that extra game. But man, if you get through that, you win your sectional championship game, you win a first game, you win a second crossover game, you know that the team coming out of Section 5 is hot. They're peaking at the right time, and they're playing some really good basketball, and that's the case with Avon right now. The Braves are clicking on all cylinders. We'll see, like you said, what they do against a really good team from Section 6 that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. For me, it's going to be maybe not super surprising, but both of our Section 5 hockey teams in the first round, the state regional round, they both had really tough teams to play against. And it was Victor going up against Orchard Park. It was Skinny Atlas in Webster Thomas in Division 2. OP was ranked number 1 in the state. They were undefeated. Skinny Atlas was ranked number 2. Both Thomas and Victor, they took it to them. They got wins to head on to the Harbor Center in Buffalo. You know, both of those teams coming from behind, you know, getting into quick 1-goal deficits, and they were able to pull out the win. So, you know, not certainly surprising. These are great teams, but to have both of our Section 5 teams beat elite competition says a lot about the state of Section 5. Says a lot about what they could potentially do at the Harbor Center here. And it's funny enough, both of these teams are actually the same 2 teams that were in that made it to the state semifinals 2 years ago when things got shut down due to COVID. I remember this week exactly what I was doing. This Thursday, it was the day that everything got canceled. Right before the state semifinals, we had all the basketball set. Everything got wiped out. So 2 years later, both Thomas and Victor are coming back. They both talked about you know, how, you know, that motivated them a little bit. So it's good to see them both getting back to the Harbor Center and trying to complete some unfinished business there.
You know, some divine intervention. That's kind of weird though. Like the same exact teams 2 years later. I remember you guys had talked about it when I first got here about how we got some really good hockey teams, but unfortunately haven't been able to go the distance due to COVID. And I had never thought about it, the fact that the last time there was an opportunity was these 2 teams. So we'll see what the Blue Devils and Titans can do for round 2.
Yeah, obviously, you know, I'll be out there in Buffalo for those championship games. I'll be out there for the Far West Regionals for boys basketball as well. Speaking of which, we've got our guest coming on right now, Mary Margaret Johnson from WIVB. She brought a lot of insight. We always love talking to her. Let's bring you that interview right now. All right, we are thrilled to be welcomed in by the aforementioned Mary Margaret Johnson of our sister station WIVB in Buffalo, here to break down all the Far West Regionals. We got some great games coming up. Mary Margaret, how are you doing today?
I am doing just peachy. Just super excited to be here. Thanks for having me on again, guys.
Yeah, you know, we always love having you on for your insights. You know, last time we had you, you know, the Far West Regionals, our sections came together. We had the big Bennett McQuaid controversy. So let's just hope things stay, you know, in between the lines this time.
Oh yeah, I don't want to have to push that game back a couple days like we did last time. So let's just let's get them all done, all out of the way in a couple days, and then just be done with this this conversation again.
Yeah,
All right.
that's really true though, because there's a snowstorm like that's possibly on the way. So let's hope that it stays, minimal, not too much precipitation. So let's pray that it was COVID last time. Let's hopefully the snow stays out the picture this time.
Carl, don't put that out into the universe. We don't need that. We don't
need messenger. I'm just a messenger. I'm just a messenger.
Yes, we will blame our respective meteorologists if that is the case. But we will get to the action. We are inside out of the snow. We got some great games coming up. We're going to start with the boys slate. This is over in Mary Margaret's turf at Buff State College, hosted by Section 6 this year. We will start off with the first game of the slate at noon. It is potentially a quasi-state championship game. Just looking at the state rankings, we've got Avoca Prattsburgh versus Westfield. Avoca Prattsburgh, we've talked about them all season long. We got to see them once. Number one in the state. Your Westfield team, second in the state. Just tell us a little bit about how they got here and maybe what you expect out of them.
Westfield is one of the best teams coming out of Section 6, if not the best team. I think that they are absolutely fantastic. They are 22-1 overall this season. Their only loss coming to an outstanding Olean team who just played in the Class B crossover game the other day, and that's Class B. They only lost to one team, a Class B team that's two classes ahead of them. They've played 8 Class B or C teams this season, beaten 7 out of 8 of those guys, except for Olean. They are outstanding. They're on a 21-game win streak. That only lost to Olean coming in the second game of the season. They're just coming off a really big 49-30 Section 6 win over Sherman this weekend. So they're riding hot. I mean, they're definitely one of the teams to beat for sure.
Yeah, Avoca Prattsburgh, number one in Class D. They also have played up a little bit. They beat a really, really quality Lions team that at the time was number one in the state in Class C. So both of these teams have tested themselves against top competition, have proven themselves, like you said, against those top competition. Looks like we should be in for a good opening round matchup at Buff State. Moving on to the 145 matchup in Class C, another really close contested game, if we are to believe the state rankings. Avon out of our Section 5, 8th in the state. Salamanca, 7th in the state. Tell us a little bit about the Section 6 representative here.
So yeah, Salamanca, they are 16-7 this year. They were the 4 seed actually in the playoffs this year. They beat top seed Randolph and 2 seed Holland to get to this point. So they beat some tough competition. They beat Holland, not only just like a really close game, because it was a close game against Randolph, but they beat Holland 70-51 in the Section 6 championship. So they did not let that 4 seed really stop them at all. They've gotten better as the season has gone on. And I think that they're going to be another really tough team to beat.
Yeah, Salamanca, like you said, rising up those ranks. Avon here, we have 3 Class C teams. So they had to beat a tough Rochester Academy team in their championship game. They had to beat York in the first crossover game. Then they beat Oakfield, Alabama in the second one. So both of these teams very well tested, especially when you get, these two types of teams seem to both be peaking at the same time. So, should be an interesting matchup for sure. 145 Class C matchup. And then the 330 game, we're getting into the big schools. They jump right to AA, Aquinas versus Jamestown. This literally our first 3 matchups are all decided by one in the state rankings. So we should be in for some great games. When we think Jamestown over here, we think about what they've been doing on the football field. We saw them take it to Canandaigua in Class A. Is it the same football dudes really good at basketball as well there?
Literally, I was just about to say that. These are so many of the same guys. And I actually did a story about them right before the playoffs started because during the football season for the last couple of years, it's been the same kind of thing that they've been having on the basketball court. They've been really outstanding, one of the top seeds coming in. And then they always have, in the past couple of seasons, have found a way to lose in the playoffs. And it's always been super heartbreaking. And, for these guys that, in these teams that they play so many of the same sports, so many of these guys were on that football team that were able to, to win the section for the first time in years. We're able to win the Far West Regional for the first time in years. So they have had that experience of being on losing teams in the last couple seasons. And then this season, being the one that we're able to, to break that seal and get those wins. And they're taking a page out of the same book that they had, just a couple months ago on the football field. So they're doing a lot of the same things. They are one of the best teams in Class AA, one of the best teams in Section 6, one of the most fun teams, I think, to watch. They're just like outstanding on offense, on defense. They're all up in your face on defense. I think it's really funny to watch. They are just like crowding the baseline. They don't like to have other people throwing the ball in. They're just, they want the ball. They want to score. They cruised through Class AA this season. And the regular season, they did not lose a game to anybody in AA except for Clarence, which was a tough loss, right before the end of the regular season. So they're 19-3. Their other 2 losses have come to other fantastic fantastic teams this season. And they're coming off a 59-34 win in the Section 6 championship game over Niagara Falls, who is a perennial powerhouse here in Western New York. So they've got their stuff, they've got their stuff ready. They're ready to take it on anybody. And again, this is another one of those games that I am super, super excited to watch, because I think Aquinas is, another one of those teams that I think this one's probably going to come down to the wire, and Jamestown's not going to have as massive a win as they have in the last couple seasons, or in the last couple games this year.
I think the first thing that came to mind when I noticed Jamestown against Canandaigua was how physically imposing they were, especially Jalen Butera. And you say it's the same type of guys that are playing basketball as well. It'll be interesting to see how they match up with Aquinas, because Aquinas also has some pretty well put together guys. So
they got some dudes, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if it's the same guys that play football that are going to be on that basketball court, it's going to be a physical game, probably up and down, as you just alluded to, with Jamestown liking to get out a little bit. Sounds like a fun one to me.
I mean, the top 2 scorers this season on Jamestown are Trey Drake, who is the quarterback of the football team, and Jalen Butera, who we all have seen what he can do, once he gets going. I mean, they are scored 279 points and 239 points so far this season. So and they also have some size. They've got some, like Trey Drake is a really big guy, and they have another couple kids that are really tall, and, they like to rebound. They like to get the offensive and defensive rebounds. So yeah, they're a really great team.
Now, Aquinas, AA private school, they've played a lot of these teams in Buffalo that you've seen. They beat St. Francis, they swept Park, they crushed Global Concept, they split with St. Joe's, their last loss, and then they swept Canisius, which at least what I saw on the website is your top ranked team in Section 6. How does Jamestown kind of stack up with, those elite privates? Have they gotten to play any of those, elite private schools this season?
So one of their losses this season did come to Canisius, and that was in a tournament that was, right at the end of Christmas break. And it was a close game, but it was pretty much all Canisius. Canisius is another one of those teams that's just outstanding, and they're just so good in literally everything they do. That's why they're playing in the Catholic State Championship game this weekend here in Buffalo. But that was another one of those games that I just kind of had my eye on, and I was watching. I was like, whoever wins this game, I feel like is going to win it all. And Canisius has a chance to this weekend, and they did beat Jamestown, and that was, a really tough loss for Jamestown, because their first loss of the season came in like their second or third game. And then this one was like right near the end of the regular season. So they kind of got their stuff rocked a little bit, and then were able to come back stronger. And that's the same thing that they did after they lost to Clarence. So I think, they're right at the right spot, I think, right now.
Definitely. Moving on to the night games. We get a little bit of a break. They clear out the gyms. They try and give all of us a break a little bit. Then we get to the Class B championship game. Newark versus Alleghany-Limestone. Both of these teams, Cinderella-ish, if you could say. Neither team's ranked in the state rankings. Looks like Alleghany-Limestone went on quite a heck of a run to reach here. Tell us a little bit about Alleghany-Limestone, Mary Margaret.
So I have in my notes right now that Alleghany-Limestone is the dark horse of Section 6. They were the 6th seed in the playoffs. Nobody really had them, slated to win it all. And then they had a huge upset in their semifinal game. And then they had another huge upset in their Section 6 championship game. I mean, they beat Tapestry 66-44. They were the 6th seed in the playoffs. So they had they had a hard road to get to. And then they played in the Class B crossover game on, what day is it? On Tuesday, and they beat Olean, which is a perennial powerhouse, and Olean has won 16 of 19 Section 6 championships. So they were they were the team that everyone thought Olean was kind of going to run away with it. And Allegany-Limestone handed it to them. And they took that game to overtime. That was a really close back and forth game in the fourth quarter. And then in overtime, they just absolutely smoked Olean. So they're on an 8-game winning streak right now. They're, 18-7 overall, but I don't think that at this point in the year, that's kind of a factor to anybody, because they've proven that they can beat anybody that they play, especially, right here at the end of the game of the season. And they're at a really good spot. I think that they're peaking exactly when they need to be.
Now you talk about them peaking at the right time. Are they shooting the lights out? Are they playing a complete game? Are they beating teams with their press? Do you know how are they kind of, going on this run here?
So it looked to me when I was at the game the other day that they were just playing, all out. There was never a point where they were kind of lull. I feel like there's been a lot of teams that I've seen where they go, they take a huge lead and then they kind of lay off the gas. That was never the case for Allegany-Limestone. Never the case in any of these playoff games that they've had. They've just been all out the whole time. They are not afraid to beat anybody, and they're not playing like they're afraid. And I think, they have their top scorer is a senior in Tyler Curran. He has 373 points this season. And then they've got 2 players with over 200 points. So they can shoot, they can rebound, they can really do everything. And they have a couple of players that have a good amount of points this season. So they've had, and Tyler Curran was one of the guys that had their the layup and one at the very end of the game to send it to overtime. So they have some clutch guys. They have guys that have had a lot of experience on this team, and I think that they're ready to keep the streak going.
And then the nightcap at Buff State, at least in boys basketball, our top representative from Pittsburgh, Mendon, 23-1, second in the state overall, number 1 in NISFA teams. So by the books, the favorite to win the state championship game, taking on Amherst, 13th in the state. How can the Tigers potentially try and pull off this upset here?
They have been a very, very great team this season. And I feel like there was a point in the year when I looked at them and I was like, I don't think that this team is ever going to lose, because they were beating all of these really top teams by, 15, 20 points. And I was looking at them like, okay, that's the one to beat. And then they had a really tough run in the Section 6 the Section 6 playoffs. They had to beat Health Sciences, which was, that was number 1 versus number 2. They beat them by 5 points. So it was a pretty close one. And then they played Niagara-Wheatfield 50-45 in the Class A crossover. And that was a fantastic game. I kind of had Amherst as the team that I thought was going to come out of the section in that game. And they had a pretty tough time in, the first quarter, and then they just really picked it up, and they only allowed 12 points in the second half of that game. So that was, their defense really stood up. They have 400 point scorers so far on this team, and Nick Moore. Teddy McDuffie has 300 points, also has over 300 rebounds. So, they've got some big guys that have, a lot of points for that team. So as long as they can stay out of foul trouble and, just get the balls in the bucket, I think that they're going to have a really good chance to win. But again, they're 22-2. So going up against the number 1 team in the state is going to be tough, but they're playing some really close games and they're coming out on top of them.
This time of year, AJ always talk about it. It's a make or miss game. And, just depending on how the ball rolls that night, who knows who wins. But I think the one thing about Mendon that makes them so unique is they can play any style of basketball in terms of getting up and down the court, being physical. But as you alluded to, if Amherst is this massive and a big team, Mendon really doesn't have like a huge big man underneath. So maybe that's one way to, neuter what they've been doing this year. But they're a great team. They're ranked first in the state for a reason. So clearly they're not going to roll over for anyone. But I can't wait for this matchup, because if they're clicking at the right time, we'll see if they can keep that magic alive.
And Amherst definitely has the height. They also have a guy on their team that's 6'7". Like that was, I think, the reason that they were able to beat Niagara-Wheatfield, who was also on a really good roll this season. They were taller, they were bigger, they had more height, and Niagara-Wheatfield only had a couple guys. One of them was an offensive lineman who kind of just hung out underneath the basket and was their number 1 rebounder. But Amherst definitely has the height. They also have the speed, they have the size. So I think it's going to be a really, really good matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Mendon in these playoffs. They just beat a really good East team. Their top player was, they kind of had one guy, he was out on the wing. So, Jackson Green, who's, one of the best, probably the best athlete in Section 5, football, basketball, lacrosse. He was just able to take him out of the game. And that was, good night Eagles. So you mentioned their height. You mentioned multiple guys who can do it for them. I think this is going to be a really fun game to cap off our slate here at Buff State. And we're going to head on over to our neck of the woods for Rush-Henrietta. Carl's got a busy day for him on Saturday. Rush-Henrietta High School starting off with a good one there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a team that I saw once this year, BK. And when I saw them, they looked great in their sectional championship against Fairport. They're ranked 4th in the state, but they're going against Lancaster, who's undefeated and ranked 2nd. So, MMJ, tell me what makes Lancaster so unique, because the BK that I saw was really darn good. And apparently the voters think Lancaster is even better.
I mean, Lancaster is undefeated. They're 21-0. They are so good. I mean, you guys, I cannot even express, like, every single time I've gone to a Lancaster game, I've shown up and then they've been up by 40 at the half. Like, they are unstoppable. They have probably the best player, one of the best players in Section 6 in freshman Maddie Francis, who's getting a ton of D1 offers already as a freshman. She's massive. She's their top point scorer. She has over 300 points this season. And then they also have some really, really good speed. They've got, senior Rachel Kamrowski, who also has 300 points this season. I mean, they're outscoring opponents in the 2 games they played in the playoffs by an average of 65-37. They're so good. I don't even know how to describe the fact that they literally, I've never seen a team that has come anywhere close to them, and nobody can hold a candle up to Lancaster, and at least in Section 6 right now.
I saw their schedule, did a quick peek. No team has been within single digits this entire year against them.
They're just so good.
I mean, and if there's going to be a team that's going to be able to compete with them and give them a good run for their money, it's going to be this BK team who has the good sisters, Carissa and Kaya, who are really, really good. They can push a tempo. I've seen them once, AJ's seen them in the past a ton, but they're a really aggressive team. I know it's not 94 feet in high school, but they make you defend every single inch of the floor. They're going to make you work for every single inch on the court. But apparently Lancaster is going to bring their own style to the game as well, because they're not going to fold for anyone, apparently.
Lancaster, every single game I've gone to has been like an hour and 15 minutes. Like, it is so fast. They don't like to foul. They just come in, crush the opponent, and head out to the next game.
Yeah, and when we talk about Lancaster being 2nd in the state, 1st, 3rd, even Bishop Kearney at 4th, they let them play in NISFA. They're actually a private school. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, all not in NISFA, all private schools. Then you got Lancaster repping it in number 2. So that I think this kind of shows how good Lancaster has been all season long.
Absolutely. They didn't play any of the top private schools around here, but I would have loved to see them play like Cardinal O'Hara or St. Mary's, because those two, I mean, I would have enjoyed seeing that just from a personal standpoint, because those teams are also fantastic and also have some, really good D1 talent, but Lancaster definitely the number 1 team coming out of Section 6 and the number 1 team really just that I've seen in a really long time.
Yep. Yeah. BK did get a crack at Cardinal O'Hara. They split him. So that just goes to show you should be in for a good one.
Absolutely.
And over to the 1:00 game, we're going to go from AA down to Class D. We have the Section 5 representative, Batavia Notre Dame, taking on Sherman. Can you tell us a little bit about what Sherman has to offer?
So Sherman is 13-8, but this is another one of those teams that I think that you can't look at their record and, know a lot about them, because they have, they beat Panama, which is one of their rivals. They beat them by 3 to get to the sectional championship game, where they beat Pine Valley 59-37. So, they've played in some close games that they've won in the, in this last half of the season. And then they've also really blown teams out of the water like they did in the Section 6 championship game. So I've been a Buffalo News voter for girls and boys basketball. I was also one for football this season, but I've always had Sherman in my top 10 in the small schools, because I don't think that you can look at their record and know a lot about them, but I think that they've been one of those teams that just kind of been like slowly chugging along, and they did win the section. So I think they're right there.
That was the first thing I noticed was their record. I was like, for them to be 13-8 and to make it this far, clearly something's going well right now this time. And I'm not going to judge them by their record because they clearly won the requisite games to get to this point. So they obviously deserve to be here. And Batavia Notre Dame played out in Letchworth for our game, so we weren't able to catch them, but they are 21-4, so they're a formidable opponent in that regard. They're ranked 5th, Sherman's ranked 8th. So it's a top 10 matchup in the state, and we'll see who gets to head on to the state tournament after that one. And then to the 3 o'clock matchup, we're over to Class C. One of my favorite teams to watch. East Rochester is going up against Frewsburg. Frewsburg's ranked 14th. What do they have to offer, and what are they bringing to the table?
So they're 21-3 this season, and they beat Portville 59-35 in the Section 6 championship, but they were beat by Portville earlier this season. So it was kind of a redemption game for them. And I mean, 59-35, that's another one of those. I feel like we had a lot of really lopsided Section 6 championship games this season, that being one of them. But it's another one of those teams like 21-3. They've got a really good record, and Portville was one of their losses that they had this season. So they're doing something well in Class C.
It'll be a very interesting game. East Rochester, they've been carried here by their star player, Sammy Lewis. She was our player of the week this week. She dropped a monstrous stat line in the sectional title game, 34 points, 17 boards. She's a stud in all sports, so we'll see if she can keep that run alive, excuse me. And interviewed her earlier this year. Their season was obviously cut short due to COVID last year, and the number one thing that was on her mind was a state championship. So we'll see if she has her motivation set on that, and to see what Frewsburg has to say about that. Then next, we're going to go to our 5 o'clock matchup with Waterloo up against Lewiston Porter. Now, this is another top 5 matchup. Waterloo ranked 1st in the state, and Lewiston Porter ranked 5th. What are they bringing to the table, and what can they do to upset Waterloo, who is, in my opinion, one of the top 3 teams I've seen all year, regardless of classification?
That's the same kind of thing that I feel about Newport. I mean, they have been outstanding this season. They're 21-3. They have beaten, so many fantastic teams, and they've been the top team in the small school section, here in Western New York. And I've voted for them every single season, or every single week, since I've seen the first game of that they played this season, when they beat Nichols like by 50 points. And I was like, okay, that is, there's a good team. They had probably one of the toughest runs to get to this point, and they had to play Eden, which was another fantastic team in AJ's alma mater, and Eden,
the mighty Eden Raiders. Let me correct you there.
They had to beat them last night 55-42, and that was the toughest, the biggest loss that Eden had all season. And Newport just looked outstanding from start to finish in every single aspect of the game. They can shoot, they can rebound. They literally did not ever take their foot off the gas, much to Eden's dismay. But in the Class B Section 6 championship game, it came down to a last second, literally 4 seconds left. They had to beat Depew 60-57. I was there for only the final minute, and that was literally all you needed to see. The lead changed like 6 times in the last minute of play. And and Depew was another fantastic team this season, but Newport has shown that they can, grind it out, and they had no fouls at the very end of the game. They were able to get that last second win. They have the junior Sophie Auer, who had the game-winning, basket in that Section 6 championship game. She's got 414 points this season. Tessa Shuey is a senior, and she, but the 1-2 punch between Tessa Shuey and Sophie Auer, Tessa has 359 points. Like, they have just both been fantastic. They've got some girls that can shoot threes, like Eliza Whitehead. They have just so many fantastic players, and they have been so much fun to watch. They are just so smiley all the time. Like, they're just such a fun team. They've been really, really awesome.
Yeah, we've both seen Waterloo a couple times this season. I saw them in their crossover game. Didn't allow a point in the fourth quarter. So they Waterloo has the size, and Gia White Principio, they have the speed and the athleticism on the outside. Morgan Caraballo, Macy Carr, Jasmine Lewis. What is kind of their bread and butter? Where do you think they might try to attack a talented team like Waterloo?
Sophie Auer can beat you in the paint. She's just so good. She drives to the basket. She's not afraid to get fouled. She just really puts the team on her back in moments like that. And they needed her in that Depew Section 6 championship game, and she just took it in stride. I mean, she's been definitely the one to keep your eye out on. And she's got this big, huge curly hair, and she's definitely going to be hard to miss, but also hard to stop.
Yeah, Gia White Principio, she's a formidable presence down low, but if you get her with a quicker forward down low, that kind of tripped her up 2 years ago when they played a really good team for Palmac in the sectional finals. I'm going to be interesting to see how she fares in this game against, like you said, a really good Looper team that obviously is good when they're able to beat, as I said, the mighty Eden Raiders.
mighty Eden Raiders. Oh man,
we will not talk about their boys basketball program though. I was a part of that program. We're just gonna ignore them with much love to the Raiders there.
For sure. And then for our nightcap over at Rush-Henrietta on Saturday, it's gonna be the mighty Mendon. When Mendon plays Mendon basketball, shout out to AJ for that one. They're gonna play Williamson South, who's ranked 11th in the state. Look, I'm not going to lie to you, MMJ. Mendon is their everything and said and more about this team. But Williamsville clearly has made it this far. So what about them?
So I actually did get to see Mendon play this season when they played Hamburg. I think it was over Christmas break, and I shot the game for you guys, but they really just took it to Hamburg.
We appreciate it.
They really took it to Hamburg, and Hamburg is, again, one of those teams that is so much fun to watch and so good. But it just felt like there was nothing that Mendon could do that Hamburg could stop. So this is going to be a really good game because, again, Will South is one, like these top three teams that we have coming out of AA, A, and B are some of the most fun teams to watch. And Will South has been a perennial powerhouse. They have been so good in the last couple seasons. This season, they're doing it without Amari DeBerry because she's at UConn. So we have some, big teams come out of Will South. They also have, they're just so incredible. They beat Hamburg in probably the best game that I have ever seen last night. It was the Class A crossover, and it was 80-75 was the final score. That was like the highest scoring girls basketball game, well, near the highest scoring high school basketball games in general that I've ever seen. It was so much fun to watch. I normally stay for the first half because it was the later game, but I stayed for the whole game because I was like on the edge of my seat for the whole thing. Gretchen Dolan, who is a junior, who has D1 offers from Will South, she scored 52 points last night. And that's the second time this playoffs that she scored over 50 points in a game. She has 814 points this season. She is unstoppable in everything that she does. When she's, on the outside of the arc, she's amazing. And I think she only missed like 1 3 last night. When she drives to the paint, she's amazing, and she makes every basket. She can rebound, she can steal. She has 109 steals, 175 rebounds. She is fantastic. So this is going to be, I think, out of all of the games, probably this one is going to be the best game because it's two fantastic teams, bunch of really good players on this Will South team. Amari DeBerry's younger sister is on this team. She's, really young. So it's going to be, it's just, they're so fun to watch.
A 50 ball is nothing to sneeze at. All right. Once I heard that, and then I know she's not on the team no longer, but I also heard UConn, and I just kind of froze for a second. I
got to see her a little bit. I think 1 or 2 years ago. Yeah, she was good. She was real good.
It's like playing Alabama with football. So but then, as you already know, they bring a lot to the table. I want to say a strong 5, but there's probably 3 or 4 girls that I haven't that hasn't put up a big stat line this year that can probably go as well on the men's team as well. But their main girls with Anaya Coleman, Lily Kennedy, Danny Schroff, those 3 girls. I saw them when they played in their sectional championship the other day. it was an 8-point lead at half, and it was like 25 at the end of the third, just because they were just tired of the game being close. I felt like they just was throwing the ball at the hoop, and like just throwing it up. They're like the rim was an ocean that game. So they're gonna have to, I guess, bring it all, because I mean, Williamson South, you look at the record, may not be formidable, but anytime you're going against a girl who dropped 50 in a game, you got to bring your A game, because that is nothing to sneeze at. So that's also one that I will be lucky to be at, and hopefully it's a good one.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be the one. I mean, it was just so much fun last night. I cannot explain. To either team that came out was going to be fantastic, but I mean, and Hamburg had a girl, Clara Strack, who scored 41. So they had, between the two of them, they had the majority of the 155 points that were scored last night.
Yeah, we have got a great slate of games in Buffalo State, or at Buffalo State, at Rush-Henrietta. I'll be out there at Buff State with MMJ. We'll get all our coverage for you, Carl, holding down the fort at Rush-Henrietta. We both got some great games for us. I'm sure we'll be doing a little bit of highlight sharing. So the we transfers will be going back and forth all weekend long. Mary Margaret, we thank you every time you come on this show. We look forward to having you every single time. And I'm sure, we'll see you this weekend, and I'm sure we'll see you in the spring for some spring sports as well.
I was just about to say, I mean, I'll see you guys this weekend, and I'll see you back here in this Zoom sphere when we're talking about, the Far West regionals when it comes to baseball, softball, lacrosse, girls lacrosse, everything. We've got it all covered.
No, thank you once again for coming on. We really, really appreciate it, being able to talk shop and talk hoops. And also for everyone at home, it's March. So, my cues, Orangeman, we're doing good right now. We're down two right now to Duke in the second half. By the time this releases, hopefully Jimmy B has another game to coach, and we'll be going on to the ACC semifinal game. That's my piece. Thank you, MJ, for coming on.
Go Orange. And also hook 'em horns.
All right, we want to thank Mary Margaret Johnson once again for coming on the pod, dishing out her basketball knowledge, and, pulling back the curtain a little bit. We did that intro as the Syracuse game was winding down. We're doing this outro after it's over. Carl, how you doing? How you holding up there?
I'm hanging in there, man. I always say death taxes, cues in March. We always, find a way to go to another level this time of year. And unfortunately, ran out of gas late. Duke is ranked top 10 in the country for a reason. Man, it was rough to see, especially seeing my guy Buddy in his career like that. But I'm an Orangeman. It's tough to see, but we battled, and that's all I can ask for.
They did cover though, so you got that for them.
I guess Q's in March technically is a money line. It could be the spread as well. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, Q's is great in March, and as we all know, great teams cover. So holds out true there. However, they did not cover after the second half. So we're putting up a little win for that one as well for some of the folks at home there. We have got a great weekend coming up for you here in Section 5 Sports. And then after that, we're out to Glens Falls for the state championships, baby. We've also got the bowling championships this weekend in Syracuse. So we got a lot to keep our eyes on, here in Section 5. We got a great week of action for you. Last weekend, our busiest day of the year. This weekend, a little bit toned down, but man, we got a lot of great stuff coming our way.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited for sure, especially seeing some teams that we haven't seen a lot. Those Section 6 opponents out of Buffalo. And then obviously with you going out to the Buffalo area, back to the hometown to see some good high school action. I can't wait. You guys always tell me this time of year is pretty fun and electric to cover. And the first weekend was fun, and I hope it holds true for the second.
Yeah, hopefully the snow stays away. We're both not new to the upstate New York weather. So, we're pretty used to it. So we'll be able to get around good enough. So just hopefully it makes things a little bit easier on us trying to go back and forth. We've got a lot of great coverage for you. We'll have it all for you on rochesterfirst.com. More highlights than anybody else. We bring you all the action to as many things as possible. You can catch all of our features and stories on there, and all of our highlights we've had going on all week long. We will have that for you on rochesterfirst.com, which is also where you can find this podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. We're everywhere all the time, both on the high school fields and on the digital fields as well. So once again, we want to thank Mary Margaret Johnson for coming on the show, providing her insight, and I'm sure we'll be seeing her again in the springtime for some more action. But until then, and until we get to our Far West Regional action this weekend. Thanks for joining us here on the High School Huddle podcast. For Carl Jones, I'm AJ Feldman. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.